Well, here we're live now, so people might join us in a few seconds. Might start coming in. Here they come. But yeah, Rebecca, I'm so excited to have this chat with you. Like, I know you're somebody else who is super into horror as well. Lots of different aspects of it. And today we're just going to really touch on movies, I guess, because that's where we both overlap quite a lot. I think in terms of what we like. Um, Tell us about yourself, Rebecca. So as people come in now and join us in the conversation, tell us who you are and what you write about in Substack.
Yeah, sure. So I have a Substack called Dr. King's Curiosities, which is kind of like a cabinet of curiosities, I guess, of things that I'm interested in. So it's a lot of kind of curious history, strange, weird, wonderful history. I talk a lot about creepy things, so horror movies, horror stories, history of horror, and then I also write a bit about the craft of writing. And in kind of real life, I am a writer. I have a kind of fiction and non-fiction side of my career, so I do a lot of work for theatre and recently librettos as well for operas.
Oh,
So lots of live performance types of storytelling. And then in my kind of non-fiction shoes, I write about the history of magic and particularly the magic of the early modern stage, which is my sort of nerdy niche interest. And I'm
oh.
currently turning my PhD on that into a monograph with Bloomsbury Arden. So that will be all about a particular kind of magic on the early modern stage. So there's a lot of overlap there with horror as well. Yeah,
Nice.
but that's me basically.
Brilliant. That's so exciting. I don't think I realized that it was that in depth for you. How did you kind of get into that? So what was your pathway like into that sort of side of things?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I sort of did a PhD by accident, which sounds silly, really, but I was going to just go and be a theatre maker. You know, I got a master's degree. My favorite period of history was the early modern period, so kind of 1500 to 1700. So I'd done my master's degree in the literature of that period, and I'd done loads of playwriting as a student, that kind of thing. So I was like, well, now educated enough. I'm going to go out into the real world and make theatre and tell stories for a living. And that was in 2018, 19,
Mhm.
and COVID happened. And so all the theatres closed and that was impossible. So I went back to uni and I did a PhD. And when you're doing a PhD, I suppose you've got to think, what could I bear to write about for 3 years of my
Mm.
life? And my PhD was a sort of Venn diagram of my interests, the early modern period, theatre history. I mean, I'm really nerdy about things like how people did pyrotechnics on the early modern stage, or how
Mm.
trapdoors worked, how you staged magic. And yeah, magic and belief, I guess, would be the final circle. So the history of what people have believed about the supernatural, the occult, um, all of
Mm.
that fascinates me. So my PhD was sort of in the middle of those areas. Yeah, yeah,
Fascinating.
that's it
Yeah.
really. It was kind of an accident that I did a PhD in the end.
It's so interesting though. I mean, like you just said a bunch of stuff there that I'd love to hear more about. Like, how did people do those kind of practical effects on stage? Like how you're rubbing your hands.
Oh,
How did someone do like pyrotechnics? Like, how did that work back in the day?
this is a dangerous thing to ask me about because I could just talk about this forever. There's okay, so basically there was a lot more fire in early modern theatre than you would think, especially considering the fact that a lot of the theatres had thatched roofs, so
Mm.
very flammable. And in fact, Shakespeare's theatre, the Globe, did burn down partly because of one of his plays, because a cannon was fired, a sort of stunt cannon, and the roof caught fire. And so how did they do pyrotechnics? With absolutely no regard for health and safety is how they did them. Devils used to have what were called squibs, so like little fireworks tucked into their trousers and poking out of their sleeves and things like that. There were sort of things like, well, fireworks, Catherine wheels, things that would rise up out the theatre, out the trapdoors that were sort of spewing sparks.
Mm.
All sorts of things like that, things on ropes and pulleys that also had fireworks coming off them. I mean, it was super, super, super dangerous. There were lots and lots and lots of accidents in
Mm.
early modern theatre. And actually, today, if you go to Shakespeare's Globe in London, the reconstruction replica of Shakespeare's theatre, it's not quite historically accurate because it would violate so many modern health and safety uh, protocols. It has to have more doors than the real theatres used to have. You can't pack as many people in as you
Mm.
used to, so you don't get quite as big a crowd. And also these days, of course, they have to have really good modern sprinklers. In fact, it's the only building in London that's been given special permission to have thatch. After the Great Fire of London, thatch was banned. So it does still have thatch, but it has to have really, really good sprinklers and they're very sensitive, and sometimes they go off and completely drench like the whole street next door, all the way up
Mm,
to the river, the Thames. So it's yeah,
mm.
that's how they did it. I mean, there's loads of other stuff as well about sleight of hand and illusions. It was a lot more spectacular than people like to think.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredible. I think I was in the Globe maybe like 10 years ago just to visit it and see what it was like, and it's kind of a it is quite a surreal experience standing in there knowing that what happened in that place with,
Yeah.
what Shakespeare did, and, I can imagine if you were in the crowd back in the day and things were firing off and blowing up all around you, it'll be extremely spectacular and also quite scary knowing that the river's touched above you as well. But I love that kinda intersection of your interests and how you've kind of really settled there, and it's so fascinating, and, I would encourage anybody who's joining us, by the way, to ask any questions as we go through this chat about movies. If you have any questions for either of us or any thoughts on any of the movies that we mentioned, just feel free to pop them in there. But Rebecca, so let's just dive in straight away to your favorite movies that you've seen in the last kind of year or so, I guess, and it can be big cinema movies, small indie kind of things maybe people would have missed along the way, things that came out in the last year or maybe came out a while ago, but you only caught them in the last sort of 12 months. Have you got any that spring to mind straight away you wanna touch on?
Yeah, so I think that last category is probably the biggest for me because I've got this big list of horror films that I should get it up actually so that I can refresh my memory. Um, I oh, hang on, I've done something strange with my tab. No, I won't do that. Um, I don't want to accidentally quit the screen. But anyway, I normally what I have is a big list of horror films that I just want to see, and a lot of those are old horror films. You know, like even going back to, I mean, stuff from the 30s um
Mm,
and so I'm not always that good at catching the newest indie releases because I feel like I'm still filling in all these gaps. There's such a great kind of backlog of great horror films to watch from the last 100 years.
mm.
But recently, I mean, I only the other day watched Obsession finally.
Oh, really? So good, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I know. I actually did it. I really enjoyed it. I quite liked how much of a fairy tale it was. I wasn't expecting it to feel like such a kind of, you know, you mess around with wishes and you know, you get more than what you bargain for, that kind of sort of archetype.
Mm,
And it was interesting because a couple of people have talked about that being, you know, whether or not that is a misogynistic story or
mm,
whether it's kind of whether the supernatural element is convincing. I think I got the sense that I might not it might not be as fun the second time, maybe.
mm.
It might be one where I sort of really enjoyed it on the first watch, but
Yep.
maybe it won't hold up for me. I don't know. What did you must have seen Obsession.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I loved
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
and I actually know what you mean about that sort of thing with horror movies in general, the second watch kind of situation not holding up because I've gone to some I'll come back to a session in a second, but I've gone to some movies in the past, and they've absolutely scared the pants off me in the cinema, and I've come out, like, loved it, but really, really shocked me and scared me. Then I watched it again, and it's been nothing, like, not even
Yeah.
slightly, uh obviously, I know whenever the scares are coming, but even so, it's almost like I'm watching like a diluted version of the original one or something. I don't know why that's the case, but I remember watching Oddity in the cinema and really, really scared me. It really hit all the right notes for me and really freaked me out. But then whenever I watched it again, I was like, oh, this isn't even slightly scary. I don't know why that's the case,
Mm.
but maybe it's just been the cinema experience. I don't know. But Obsession, yes, I can understand how that might not hold up on the second watch as much. The first time around, it really, really got me. Like there were a few moments, like the backwards walk thing and stuff like that that they did, and like that really bizarre scene, and just things like that that were I didn't see coming, and just the way uh, Indy Navarrete or in Navarrete, however you pronounce her name, she was just so good at kind
Oh
of like
yeah.
jumping from being quite normal one second to just being completely psychotic the next, and then back again
Yeah.
just like with the flick of a switch. But yeah, no, it definitely was a big question in terms of the misogyny kind of aspect of it that I didn't really get as I was watching it until I got to the very end, and I was like, "Hang on a minute, what that guy did to her was actually pretty terrible," and she's the one who actually comes out at the end of it alive, but spoiler alert, by the way, sorry, alive, but left to deal with the consequences of everybody else's.
Massively traumatized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what did you think about all that?
To me, it didn't. I didn't read it as misogynistic. I think because it felt so much like it was a critique of him. It was a critique of the of him, and her behavior isn't a woman's behavior. It's a thing that has possessed a woman
Mm,
behaving in a caricatured way, um, according to what he thought he wanted from her. And I did I the last moments where the music's very chirpy felt a bit jarring for me because I kind of had gone with it, and I was really pleased that she had been released from it at the end. And then the music at the end, as you can hear her screaming, there's this kind of sort of like slightly cheesy TV drama kind of music going on. And that was odd for me because I thought, "Yeah, why are you undercutting the fact that this is really quite horrible?" I mean, and maybe it's supposed to be sort of dissonant and um,
mm,
oh, it's a contrast between her trauma and the chirpy music. But for me, it felt almost like they were trying to make a joke out of something that should have just landed as a very as
mm,
quite an impactful moment. Because there were funny moments in the story.
mm,
You've got that humor and horror in there already. I thought maybe that was just a moment where we should have just had the heart and just
mm.
had the just sat
Yeah,
with her and her trauma. Um, but I think for me, in some ways, I loved her performance. I love seeing an actor who can. I love in horror films where something really scary hinges on something that an actor is just doing with their face
yeah,
or makeup effects, and they
yeah.
did both of those things in this film. So you're getting this really uncanny sense of a person not quite right.
Mm,
And I love the way they use that sort of traditional, again going back to the 30s, that kind of like early Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type transitions with
mm,
makeup, where you when you step into the shadow, you look creepier and it's all just done through layers of different shades of makeup on the face. I love seeing that in a modern horror film, and a very
yeah,
cost effective way of doing a really cool technique.
mm,
Um, so
yeah,
yeah, I really enjoyed Obsession. But like I say, I think maybe it won't. Maybe now that I know what she's going to do, that's the thing. It was very good. It was very unpredictable, but
mm,
I think you're right. I think maybe knowing what she's going to do spoils some of the scares a little bit. I don't know. We'll
mm.
see.
It's
Uh,
definitely the kind of movie that I think, everyone should see in the cinema if they can while it's still there, because it's a real, like, kind of crowd experience. Like, I was speaking to Shay Serrano a few weeks ago, and he mentioned it, and he talked about the moment where she, they're doing the game in the person's basement, and then one of the things in the Jenga block tower is, like, is it kiss the person beside you or something like that, whatever it is, and then she just stands up, and everyone in the cinema is like, like, "Oh, no, like, what's gonna happen here?" Because, yeah, like, she's about
she's
to,
gonna
like, flip
kill
out.
this woman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that kind of thing where, like, it's, like, fun, you know what I mean? And, like,
yeah,
people in the cinema are all experiencing the same thing in the same moment, and you kinda hear, like, the shocked, like, gasps and laughs at different times as well, and, the bit which is killing her friend on the steering wheel and stuff like that, like, it kinda goes on and on forever as well, and everyone's kinda, like, almost laughing after a while because it's so
yeah,
ridiculously over the top. Again, sorry if anyone hasn't seen it yet, but, it's been out for a while. But, going to what you said about what actors do with their faces and how, it all kinda just comes from that for them. An example of that for me, from a couple of years ago was Smile 2. I don't know if you've seen Smile 2,
I still
but
haven't seen Smile 2,
it's
no.
so good, but
But absolutely that. Even from the trailers, right? Just that kind of
yeah.
it's just an expression that's wrong.
Yeah, yeah, it
Ooh.
shouldn't they shouldn't be smiling in that moment, and Naomi Scott, who's the lead in that, she is phenomenally good in the same way that Indy Navarrete is in Obsession, just her performance, and again, I don't think that uh, horror actors and actresses often get the kudos they deserve, the accolades they deserve, because I watch these kind of performances sometimes, and I'm always blown away by it and thinking, "How is this person not winning an Oscar?" Because nobody else is performing to this level with the same kind of intensity, and, they're throwing themselves around rooms and against walls and, just going through such a unbelievable range of emotions in the space of one movie, and again, Naomi Scott is an incredible example of that. Like, she really does give it 110% for the entire duration of that movie in the same way that Indy Navarrete does. How do you feel about that kind of thing? Do you kind of get that sense as well of actors and
Yeah,
actresses in horror movies doing that?
absolutely 100% agree with
Mm,
that. Horror does not get the kudos and the appreciation that it deserves all round.
mm,
Some of the most profound, most moving, brilliant, examinations of the human condition come from horror. Some of the most brilliant performances. and also it can be fun and silly. This is
Mm.
the beautiful thing about it. You've got the whole spectrum. Um, it was nice to see Sinners do so well,
Yes.
actually, in the awards, season. Not that I really pay attention to awards type stuff, because again, like, there's never any horror in it, but it was
Mm.
nice to see Sinners being a bit of an exception to that, because I thought that was fantastic, and I
Me
love
too.
another thing I really love about, another thing I like to see in horror films is horror that uses music in interesting ways, whether that's,
Mm.
at part of the score. So I wrote this week, my article on Substack was about, the influence of the Rite of Spring, the ballet, The Rite of Spring, Stravinsky, and
Mm.
how many horror composers kind of steal from Stravinsky, from, Bernard Herrmann with the Psycho shower scene. He was friends with Stravinsky and very deliberately referenced him,
Mm.
to John Williams using it in kind of in Jaws, the low notes of Jaws, and there's a sequence in War of the Worlds, which is basically lifted from the Rite of Spring. So I love that, but I also love it when something like The Wicker Man
Mm.
has diegetic music that is scary in an interesting way.
Mm.
So I loved Sinners because it was that. It had an incredible score, but the score was where the horror came from. It was this idea of music that's so powerful that it is almost like a conjuration in and of itself, and
Mm.
it's drawing in devils. I just loved it. I thought it was such a clever idea.
Me too. I loved it so much. I remember just watching in the cinema that scene in the middle with where it kind of goes between all the different like eras in one shot, and I was just watching
Yeah.
thinking, how are they doing this? How are they blending all these different musical styles together? And it just really, really blows you away. Whether you
Sure.
love horror movies or not, you couldn't deny the power of that scene, and the whole movie is just so good, just impeccable. Um, and uh, similarly, that came out around the same time as that was Weapons, which again managed to actually get some accolades, at least to some extent along the way. Um, what did you think of Weapons? Did you see it at the time?
Yeah, I did,
Yeah.
yeah. I enjoyed Weapons. I think,
Mm.
I'm not sure, maybe I need to rewatch Weapons. I feel like it almost it changed the type of film it was, felt like it changed about halfway through,
Mm.
and it was similar to Barbarian. I'm gonna try not to spoil things too much, but in Barbarian, you had this thing kind of halfway through of, um, there's some sort of, like, creepy old hag type character, and that's where the horror is, and to some extent, when you play your cards like that and you decide what the monster is, sometimes the audience goes with it and sometimes the horror kind of stops. For me in Barbarian, the setup was really strong, was really creepy and strange. And then the second that you started to get into sort of what was in the tunnels,
Mm.
it stopped being scary for me. It was kind of fun, but it wasn't scary anymore. And I don't and it's a little bit
Agree.
hagsploitation, that thing of like she's a bit she was a sympathetic character in Barbarian in the end, but sort of this like ugh, gross kind of like dirty older woman.
Yeah.
And with I think Weapons did it better. The sort of witchy, is it Aunt Gladys? Is that her
Yeah,
name?
and
It's
Dallas,
Gladys,
yeah.
right? Because she was, I think, more genuinely scary to me than the creature in Barbarian.
Yeah.
And I that shot of her in the woods, where you just see her in the corner and she's just
She's
waving.
waving,
It's
yeah. Oh,
really creepy. Again, so it's physicality, isn't it? It's like this is a person who doesn't exactly look like a monster, but you can kind of, and actually that goes all the way back to kind of what Stephen King does so well in something like It,
mm,
where you know that what you're seeing, and this is in the Babadook as well, you know that what you see on top isn't the real horror. It's a kind of horrible, costume, a scary costume that something even worse is
mm,
wearing. So I like it when you get that just from an actor, looking like a slightly eccentric auntie, but you can tell that there's something horrible underneath. That's always, I
yeah.
always find that scary, that idea. So what I think Weapons did that really well, and it was really brutal, and it was quite funny in places as well.
Mm,
Um, so I
yeah.
enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be probably my one of my top film. I think people liked it more than me.
Mm,
Um, but
mm.
I still enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film.
I thought it was a movie that actually held up quite well this on the second watch, more so than other ones maybe have. I got it on Blu-ray and watched it again, and wasn't sure how I was gonna feel, but
Mm.
it felt really strong all the way through. And I picked up things the second time that I sort of missed the first time a little bit.
Ah, yeah.
Again, wasn't as scary second time because I knew it was gonna happen, but I think I appreciated the craft and the storytelling and the way it was shot more the second time.
Mm.
I loved Anne Gladys. Her character is just incredible. It gets so unsettling.
Yeah.
Like even with just trying to be sweet and kinda kind and things like that, or, kind and sweet, it still comes off as just so, like, skin, crawlingly creepy, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I think, what's his name again? Is it Zach Krieger? Is that what you call him? Who did those? Uh, and he's doing Resident Evil now as well,
Mm.
which I'm really excited about. I really should look this up before having this conversation. Um, yeah, Zach Krieger. But he Barbarian obviously as well. He I really like his style. I like the fact that he's, like, relatively young as an actor or a director as well, and I love the fact that there seems to be this generation of new wave, like, younger directors coming through at the minute,
Yeah,
like
like The
him.
Backrooms. That's the one that
Yes,
everyone talks
yes, I
about,
was gonna
wasn't it,
talk
for
about that
having a
too.
young.
Did you see it? Yeah?
I did. I really enjoyed The Backrooms. I
Did you?
understand people who don't because I The Backrooms is one of those things, that kind of liminal horror,
Mm,
um, is is such a Marmite thing, I think. Some people I can understand why it just doesn't land with people.
mm,
But I've always found the concept of the back rooms really creepy. I think also because I just happen to have had a few nightmares when I was a child. I used to have recurring nightmares that looked a bit like the back rooms, where I
oh,
was sort of
really?
lost in corridor, yeah, lost in sort of like offices, or I didn't usually have nightmares about monsters. I had nightmares about being lost or being in a
Mm,
place that didn't quite feel right. With I was always really scared of clocks, like ticking clocks, like an eerie kind of something that's sort of
mm,
from day-to-day life, but behaving in a peculiar way. And so the backrooms just I can kind of tell that it resonates with me because it's for quite subjective reasons. Um but I can accept all the problems with the script, or it's got a slightly strange transition halfway through where you've kind of got a different main character. Um but I just enjoyed exploring that world really,
mm,
and I think it was scary. It held up for me. I found myself, comparing it a lot to Skinamarink, which, when you was talking about having the experience in the cinema, I think I ruined Skinamarink for myself by not seeing it in the cinema, because I
okay.
watched it at home, on a streaming service, and I was on my own, and I was basically I was doing this thing, I don't know if anyone else does this, where I've got the film on one half of my screen. This is a terrible way of watching movies, but I have it on one half of my screen and I'm doing something else. And I normally do that when I know that I'm gonna be a bit scared, and
Mhm,
I can kind of like cover the screen a bit, or I can pretend that I'm not looking. And
mhm,
I think with Skinnamarink, because again, I'm so scared of those sorts of that spooky kind of nightmarish place that isn't quite right.
mm,
I just set it up so that I kind of couldn't be scared of it. I set it up so that I didn't have to look at the screen. I didn't have to get immersed in the world building, and it didn't really scare me. It bored me for the first kind of hour. Um,
mm,
but then I kind of reflected on it and I thought, I wish I'd gone and seen it in cinema and just sat there and forced myself to experience it like a nightmare.
yeah,
Um, and maybe the fact that I could tell that it would really scare me if I did that was why I ruined it for myself. So
mm,
um, I feel like I got something from the back rooms that I kind of spoilt for myself with Skinamarink by just being too much of a coward to watch it the way that the director intended.
yeah, I mean, that's a movie I still haven't seen, Skinamarink, I definitely
Mm,
need to watch it. People have and I've heard what you said, a lot of people have said that the start of it is very slow and can be quite hard to get through, but then it does kinda get scarier as it goes, and it does kinda lean into that childhood fear a lot of, like, can't escape from a house or whatever it is, and there's
yeah.
something there, in the shadows, all that sort of stuff, and, I thought for the backrooms, I think what really scared me most about it was that the terror rather than the horror, so, like, the anticipation of what was gonna happen, which I think is kinda
Yeah.
what the backrooms kinda does anyway, like, on
Yeah.
YouTube and stuff, and I 100% understand what you mean about that dream thing where you are in rooms and you feel kinda lost, and for me, it's always that there's something somewhere coming after me, I can't see it, but it's somewhere in one of the other rooms, which is kinda what the
Mm.
backrooms does,
That's
and
the entire that's the back rooms, isn't it?
that's
That's
it, yeah,
exactly that. It's there's
yeah.
something in here with me somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um, and it did scare me, and I really did feel, especially at the end, there's just certain choices with the way they did things, like the big pirate, guy, the bit where they're in, like, the shop again, on the shop floor, and he's one end of the room, and you don't see him at first because he's just standing there, and he kind of blends into the background a little bit, and then he starts to move, and it's just the choice that they made to just keep the camera on him and have him walking towards her slowly and getting closer and closer and closer rather than kind of cutting back and forward too much.
Mm.
That kind of like slow build up to that is a really, really good example in that movie of how they did that sort of thing where it was just kind of gradual build towards something. And then even like the payoff with whenever there is a kind of a horror moment, like the guy when he slides down the chute and then he kind of you see him getting pulled through the sort of the
Oh,
door in the
yeah.
wall, just
By
briefly.
something, and you
Yeah,
barely see it. It's just you can just tell that it's really big and strong,
yeah,
and he's just gone, and that's it. There's nothing. It's like
yeah.
something really predatory. It's like a kind of modern version of a jungle where there's a panther or something. There's like
Mm,
a tiger in the jungle with you. Just
yeah,
something really big that you can't quite see has pounced on him. Yeah,
yeah. And dragged him away.
horrible.
Yeah, but so good though. And it's really funny actually. One quick story about that. I was watching it in the cinema with my friends, and the bit whenever they kind of come to that room later, I think, and there's a pile of, like, clothes and things like that, and there's, like, a face in it, like, there's, like, a mask or something like that in the big pile of stuff, and my friend beside me was kind of like, why can nobody else see this? Is nobody else seeing this, like, face?" And he was kinda, like, freaking out. He thought he's the only one who could see it at the time, and afterwards it was very, very funny because he was, like, panicking when he could see this face, and the others reacting to it. But yeah, but the backgrounds were so good, Obsession was so good, like, just, banger after banger over the
Mm.
last few months. Um, did you see Hook'em?
No, I haven't seen Hokum yet.
Yeah,
I really want to though.
really good.
I'm
Yeah,
really looking forward to that one.
yeah,
Okay, good, good. I'm glad you like it because that's on
yeah.
my list.
I won't say
Yeah.
anything else about it, I don't wanna spoil it for you, but it
Okay,
is
yeah.
really good.
That's cool, that's cool. Yeah, yeah, I'm trying to think what else I've watched that's been a new release.
Mm,
But like I say, I have also just been watching lots of kind of increasingly obscure
yeah,
um kind of films from the history of horror to fill in the gaps.
mhm,
I was reading this book recently, which is called A History of Horror, um, and it's got a kind of it 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 it, it kind of just takes you through. It lists lots of titles basically. So I've made a kind of massive like master list, um
mm,
and we pick like when we're feeling like a horror film, uh
yeah,
just pick one from the list. But
nice.
so that can take us all over the place, and sometimes it's and we've been watching some of the classic kind of J horrors that we hadn't seen, like Pulse
Mm.
and Dark Water, and uh, and just gosh, what else have we watched recently? I should have made a proper list. I should have got my list ready.
It's hard to
But
think. Yeah, I can see when
yeah,
someone asks me what I've seen, I can never think what it is.
I watched this really weird film recently, which was really good fun, but was completely insane. And it's from the 30s. Somebody tell me if you can remember what this is called, 'cause off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is. But basically, it's Lon Chaney, I think, or Lon Chaney Jr., and he is a sort of carnival worker who's got no arms. But does he really have arms? Maybe he really has arms. Maybe he's just pretending to not have arms. And he's in love with this woman and he's jealous of her boyfriend who's got really strong arms. It's like a whole, and and he does things like these like knife throwing acts where he's throwing them with his toes. And there's this sort of scene where there's this climactic scene where he's gonna try and get his rival's arms torn off during this trick that he's doing, where
Okay.
he's got kind of like galloping horses on treadmills and they're kind of pulling and pulling, pulling, and you're just watching thinking, how far is this film gonna go? And it's so silly, but I really enjoyed it. So I've been watching strange stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean
I can't remember what that film is called. I'm gonna look it up. But
you'll
yeah,
remember later.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I love when you come across a movie that has kinda gone under the radar, whether it's, relatively recent or it's a long time ago, and you kinda get sucked into it a little bit, and I love just going on, like, Reddit and just, like, looking for really good recommendations of, like, movies that would have missed along the way, and you mentioned The Wicker Man, there in
Mm.
passing, and that is a movie that is really deeply unsettling, like the original Wicker Man. Have you watched it recently? Have you kind of been reminded of how it makes you feel when you watch it?
I watched The Wicker Man loads. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's probably my favorite horror
Oh,
film
really?
actually. Um, I listen to the soundtrack loads as well.
Mm,
I love the all three of the kind of unholy trinity as they're called sometimes of the early folk horror films, The Witchfinder General, Blood on Satan's Claw, and The Wicker Man. I love all of them, but The Wicker Man is probably one of my all-time favorite films.
I think
And
something about folk horror, isn't there? Like, folk horror is really something that just gets under your skin, doesn't it?
yes, and I don't
Mm.
know about. It'd be interesting to hear from you actually, from where you grew up. But I feel like I grew up in the countryside in England, and there's a lot of stuff from folk horror that feels a bit like home. So,
Yeah.
um, if you grow up in the countryside and you've got nothing to do, especially if you're a teenager, um, me and my friends at least, we used to kind of like we used to go and have picnics in places, and we would quite often find something like a well that was associated with a saint, or a haunted forest or something like that. This like silly local legend. We would kind of just use that as like an X on a map. And then
Oh.
we would go off with our bikes, and we would, we'd spend a day, and it would, when we got there, it'd be really underwhelming because it'd just be a field, something like that. But this idea of, because I grew up in Northamptonshire, which is kind of just a very rural um
Mm.
county in the middle of England, and so, if you grow up in the countryside like that, you sort of, folk horror feels like it's the equivalent of the urban legends that,
Mm.
all these little traditions and stories become part of an
Yeah.
attempt to find something interesting to do with your day. And the village where I went to school was a witch finding village,
Oh,
so it
wow.
had witches on its village sign and things like that. So it never feels that far away. The 17th century was a really
Mm.
significant time for Northamptonshire because lots of the Civil War battles were fought there, like Naseby. So again, this idea of it being kind of haunted and full of stories about communities being divided against themselves, which is a big theme in folk horror. I would argue even more important than the supernatural aspect is the sort of community gone bad aspect.
Mm.
The folk horror being the scary thing. So all of
Mm.
that, yeah, I don't know. It just, maybe it's partly my upbringing, but I've always felt quite at home in folk horror.
Yeah. No, I can relate to that. I mean, obviously, growing up here in Northern Ireland and just Ireland in general, there's
Mm.
so much deep, like, magic and horror and really ancient stuff that's interwoven into your everyday life almost. We'll pass a field where there's a hawthorn tree right in the middle of it
Mm.
because the farmers have been told not to cut it down because 'cause that'll upset the fairy folk. And that still happens now.
Mm.
There's a hawthorn tree right behind our house and stuff like that, and, it just makes you think of that kinda stuff. And, I remember my wife and I were, somewhere in Ireland, and we're for a walk in a forest, and kind of a creepy, dark forest, and just kinda turned a corner and came across this tree with a shrine on it. It was like a Virgin Mary shrine covered in little statues and things like that. And it was just really, like, it just really freaked us out at the moment because it come
That's
out of nowhere,
so cool.
right in the middle of a forest. It's right there, and, like, but that kinda stuff's everywhere. Everywhere you go, there are shrines, there are old, like, sites, as you say, like wells and things like that, or stone circles or that kind of thing, that have just, like, persisted for hundreds of years, and no one touches them, and they still remain. There's all these stories that go along with them,
Yeah.
and there's something about it that I think it is scary, but there's something kind of, like, that does feel like home. You described it really well. Like, it does make you feel settled in a weird kinda way,
Yeah.
and I think that's why folk horror is always, like, it really gets to you because it feels like home. It feels like something that you've grown up with and has been your reality. That makes
Yeah, and
sense?
The Wicker Man, with the music of The Wicker Man as well, all of the songs in it, I mean, some of them are real folk songs, and everything about it feels like it could legitimately just be a thing that they do. If you come to Northamptonshire of a May Day, you will see people doing all the things that people do in The Wicker Man, bar, the final scene,
Mm.
as far as I know. And yeah, maypoles and all this kind of like ancient fertility kind of phallic imagery, or, little local spells and traditions. Like, we have this particular weird pudding that they make in our village, which is disgusting, but everybody keeps making it because it's tradition. And and all this sort of, these eccentric, quirky things that feel ancient. And
Mm.
you sort of believe in the Wicker Man that a policeman going to this remote Scottish island wouldn't immediately just go, "Oh, they're all pagans in there." Because actually, that's a problem I had with Midsummer, which I
Okay.
enjoyed. It was fun, but I found that with Midsummer, especially by the end, just didn't believe in the community. I sort of didn't believe that this was there was just too many things. There was like a
Mm.
deformed kid. There was like a thing where they commit suicide. They had, to me, it didn't feel like a coherent
Mm,
faith system that resembled something that I could kind of believe was going on in Sweden or wherever it was set. Whereas
yeah,
I think The Wicker Man kind of, it's sort of, for a while it feels like this
yeah.
could just be kind of a
This
hippie
could happen.
neo-pagan community. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, Midsummer, uh, again, deeply unsettling, but I know what you mean. I think towards the end it does kind of turn into almost like a slasher kind of thing, almost like people are just
Yeah,
getting
exactly.
picked off. You know what I mean? Yeah, and like killed in really bizarre ways.
That's a
Um,
really good comparison, actually. I think that's what it is, because sacrifice is such a different kind of anthropological thing from slashing people. Like the
yeah,
psychology of Michael Myers is very different from the psychology of the residents of Summerisle, and so it kind of
mm,
didn't exactly like death. Death has to mean something for sacrifice to be worth doing. It
yeah,
has to be, and it has to be rare and it has to be exceptional and important, because that's what makes it a gift. That's what makes it
yeah,
a thing, a thing that the community has put effort into to please the gods. So just
mm,
having everybody being kind of randomly murdered made it feel like that these aren't. I don't really believe in this as a
yeah.
religion.
How did you feel about Hereditary in that sense in terms of how that was handled?
That's a really interesting one. I need to rewatch Hereditary because I think for the first kind of 20, 30 minutes of it, I was just totally gripped, and I thought this is one of the best horror films I've seen recently. The scene, the shock, the jump scare, um,
Which one?
where the one where the first proper one where with the girl in the car,
Oh
that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah. And then
That
everything.
really got me. Ugh. And I loved all the kind of I do love all the creepy sort of crawling around, and
Mm,
I think maybe I just need to watch it again, because I think I enjoyed it when I was watching it, but it didn't linger with me in the way that I like a good horror film too. And I think maybe it
mhm,
was just because it felt like it was a family drama, and then it felt like it was all about demons, and it didn't necessarily, on the
translate.
first watch I didn't necessarily, yeah, feel the sort of I didn't necessarily see the kind of the way that those things wove together.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I found that fun because, because like I say, I do a lot of work on the history of magic, and the sigil of the demon in that is a real is a real one from
Oh,
the
really?
Key of Solomon, I think. Yeah, so it was
Oh,
fun to see King Payman turning up in a horror film, because that's a real, and it's interesting because lots of storytellers and horror filmmakers and theatre makers are quite superstitious about
mm,
putting real occult symbols in films and mentioning real demons and things like that. It can
mm,
feel a bit too much like performing a ritual. So it's
mhm.
kind of fun to see a film just doing that. Um, I probably wouldn't. I'd be too scared. I call myself agnostic, but I'm superstitious enough not to put like a real demonic sigil in a piece of my storytelling.
Oh, yeah, no, I get yeah, I think most people would be sort of staying well clear of that just in case.
Just
Um,
on the safe side.
yeah, just to be safe. Actually, a film, I mean, and first of all, Hereditary is a film that really does scare me, it really stuck with me
Mm.
big time. I watched it on my own night, and, I felt like I couldn't leave the living room till my wife got home from work.
Aw.
I was, like, so scared
That's
about it.
good. That's what you want from a horror
Yeah,
film.
yeah, you wanna be that scared, but a movie actually that really, really deeply unsettled me, which has themes similar to Hereditary in some respects, is Undertone, which came out this year. I don't know if you saw Undertone or
I
not,
haven't
but
seen that one, no.
yeah, I don't know what it was about that movie, but I came out, like, really, really shaken by it. My
Interesting.
wife went to see the drama, the Robert Pattinson's and Zendaya one, and I went to see Undertone at the same time because she doesn't really like horror. And she came out, she's like, "Oh, that was great, I really enjoyed that, it was really good fun," and I was just like, "Let's go home." This is, like, shaking almost,
It's
but
like being the designated driver, the
yeah,
designated non-horror watcher who has to escort all the trembling
exactly.
people
That's what it
home.
was like. But I don't know what it was about that, but it was kind of in the same sense where they leaned into, like, the conjuring a demon kind of, storyline, and
Mm,
again, not to spoil it too much, but there is that element in there, and using it through like a podcasting situation, which is quite interesting as well. That's obviously the setup for it and the way it was done. I thought it was really, really, really effective. Not everybody thought that about it, but I came out of it being like, "That really, really got me."
mm,
Um, and I think it was all to do with, like, the sound, setup on that was incredibly well done. Again, the acting was incredible. Some of the choices with what they didn't show, or just the very, very slow camera pans, things like that. The kind of
Mm,
thing where you thought you were going to see something and you didn't, but you were kind of like you couldn't look away from the screen while it was happening. You know what
yes,
I mean? That
tense.
sort of thing. Yeah, it really got me. So yeah, I'll be interested to hear what you think of it if you get a chance
Ooh,
to see it.
that sounds
Mhm.
great. It makes me also the thing you say about sound makes me think of, did you ever see that film? This is from a while ago, but it was called Barbarian Sound Studio. Do you
Haven't
remember that
seen it.
one?
No.
It it was a bit, I guess it kind of flew under the radar a bit, but it's about somebody who does, sound effects for films, Foley basically. And it's a strange film. I'm not sure if it entirely worked for me as a kind of story, as a total story, but there was a sequence that really stayed with me where you watch him watching a horror film, and
Mhm.
he's doing you sort of see the color of it on his face, and you can hear these horrible, it's like someone's being tortured, or again, it's that classic thing of what you don't see is scarier than what you do. But he's kind of breaking like vegetables and making the sounds to go with these horrible scenes, and it was
Mm.
so affecting. It's a really disturbing moment, and you can kind of almost see him being traumatized by having to sort of like embody this violence through
Mhm.
vegetables. Um, but it's just a lovely homage to how important sound is, not just music,
Yeah.
but the sound effects themselves. A really nasty snapping sound can make a whole cinema groan.
Yeah, yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you mean. What would you say, Rebecca, is a movie that you've seen that does make you, like, it keeps you awake at night when you think about it, or it comes back to you, or even after watching it, you couldn't sleep for a while. Has a movie ever affected you in that kind of way?
Definitely.
Mm.
Um, I talk about this movie all the time, and I know this is kind of Marmite, and some people love it and some people hate it. I'm just gonna put it out there. I love The Babadook. I think it's one of my
I love The
favorite horror
Babadook.
films. Yay!
Okay, yeah, it scared me. It's very, very scary.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
good, okay, good. So, so I don't need to persuade you, but for me, the Babadook's one that's scary in different ways, different on different watches. And the first time I watched it, I'm very susceptible to things being in shadows. That thing that
Mm,
you've described a few times, of the camera kind of not making life easy for you, just kind of not letting you know where something's coming from or how long you're going to watch something. And the Babadook was great at using the camera to sort of hide and then expose the monster. And there's
mhm.
a wonderful scene, a really creepy moment in the Babadook where the camera goes up the staircase. It's just in the house, dead of night. The woman is in bed reading. The camera kind of shows you the hall, then it shows you the stairs, then it goes upstairs. And then it's in the bedroom and the camera's looking at her, and the camera does a normal camera thing. It just starts to zoom towards her like you would see in many a film. But then there's this moment where she almost hears a noise or something and she looks up and the camera stops.
Yeah.
She looks back down at her book and then the camera starts to move again. As if you're looking at her through the eyes of something that is coming for her. And
Me
it's
describing this is, like, freaking me out.
oh, yeah, it's so good. Um, and that film works for me. The first time I watched it, it was the monster that scared me.
Mm.
Um, and when I went home, because I watched it with two of my friends who were they were a couple and they had a couple's flat around the corner from me. And I used to go and watch movies and we used to watch horror films all the time. And it was always a test of a good horror film when I didn't want to leave because they were together. They were a couple. They got to, to cuddle together, but I had to go back to my room on my own. And I remember after the Babadook, I went back and I went to sleep, woke up earlier than normal, still dark, and I was drying my bed sheet on the door. I had it like hanging on the door, open doors of my wardrobe, so it was like this kind of shape. And in the dark, it looks exactly like the Babadook in that
Oh my
scene where
word.
it's kind of looming over her with its arms out. And I nearly shot myself. I was terrified. It clearly got totally under my skin.
Yeah.
Um, and it's
Oh
a scare
my.
it looks scary, but also the Babadook works so well for me because on a second watch, on a third watch, the mum is really scary.
Yeah.
There's this moment where she's in the bath in her clothes, and she
Mm.
picks the boy up, and she puts him in the bath with her, or just completely fully clothed, just in this lukewarm water, and she just says, "I'm not well, Sam." and you're like, but
Yeah.
again, it's the same kind of reaction you have to the monster the
Mm.
first time. For me, that the unwellness of the mother was what really stayed with me on a second watch, and I love
I
it.
need
I think
I
it's
need
just a
to watch it
great
again.
example
Just
of a
yeah,
yeah, it's just a
to
great example of
see.
a film that works on different levels and
Yeah.
in a empathic way.
Oh,
The
man.
Babadook's the one that sprang to mind. What about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, that would have been up there for me, and Hereditary is as well,
Mm,
in terms of that kind of thing. I'm trying to think of, like, older movies I've watched that really kinda stuck with me because a lot of new horror, I'm just scrolling through my what I've watched, and a lot of it is scary, but not necessarily, the kind of thing that would stick with you, if that makes sense.
mm, yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm seeing things like Longlegs and stuff from a while ago, which I thought was
Oh, yeah,
what did you
tell me
think of
about
Longlegs?
Longlegs.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, so I loved it. I thought it was really, really, really effective. Again, um, it was the first movie that I went to see in the cinema by myself. I'd never really done that before. I used to always just go with my wife or with somebody else, but then I decided, you know what, screw it. I like horror movies. I'm never gonna get enough people to go and see these with me when I wanna
Yeah.
see them, so I'm just gonna start going by myself. And that was the first time I ever went to see it with a crowd of strangers in a cinema, and I don't know if it was that, like that feeling by myself kind of thing, plus
Mm,
what was happening in the movie that really kind of stuck with me, but there's something about the shots in it, and again,
yes,
the use
I
of
agree.
sound, yeah, and things like that that again, really just get you, and I thought Longlegs was absolutely brilliant. What did you think of it? Did you
Yeah,
like it?
I think especially the first half. I
Mm,
think the second half I completely understand. It's a bit like Hereditary where if you don't have a tolerance for things suddenly becoming very satanic,
yes.
then you're
Yes,
not
it
gonna
does.
enjoy it, which it does. So if it it and by the end of it, maybe some of the logic of the plot slightly fell apart for me, but for me, the first half, I think the opening scene really stuck with me. And actually, to refer back to the Babadook,
Mm,
one thing I've noticed I find very scary is when it's not necessarily creepy children, which you do get a lot of in horror films, but it's things that are sort of for children, but that have something evil in them. There's
mm,
like the picture book in the Babadook that sort of a little bit feels like it could be an Edward Gorey book or maybe a Charles Addams book a little bit, maybe like a German book of fairy tales that's a bit dark.
mm,
And then you think, no, there's something evil in this, or
mm,
the way that Longlegs kind of talks like a fairy tale character or like you're the birthday girl, there's something about that I find horrible.
mm.
And that really worked. The way that you didn't see the top half of his face, you
Yes.
just saw this thing.
Yeah.
And oh, you can't see me properly because I've worn my long legs today. Like he was this sort of um he
He
was
was
this
so good.
entity. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so horrid.
Nicolas Cage is so good at it, like, I
Yeah.
couldn't believe what I was watching, and he's a good actor, I know he's kinda Marmite at times as well, but, he was just fantastic in that, like, so just really embodied the character so well. Um,
100%.
and actually just really quick as well, I don't wanna keep you too much longer, but, it's a really fun conversation, by the way. A movie that really stuck with me, and actually that I couldn't finish at the time, was Lake Mungo. Have you ever seen Lake Mungo before?
I had this I also started to watch Lake Mungo on my own
It's
and couldn't
scary.
couldn't finish it, and then my
Yeah.
boyfriend came and I watched it with him, and I was much happier watching it with somebody else. I don't think he was scared of it either, so it sort of did because it wasn't affecting him.
In the
I,
same way.
relaxed
Yeah.
with it, but when it zooms in on the back of the photographs and there's a thing that you didn't notice the first
Yes,
time,
oh my word.
horrible,
She's just
horrible,
standing there,
horrible.
yeah. Or like
Yeah,
this it's even just the people, like, talking about it, like, there's her mom was talking really candidly into the camera about her daughter's, like, ghosts coming in and sitting in the end of the bed and stuff like that, and I was just, like,
yeah,
watching it being like, "I don't know if I can handle this." It was really getting under my skin,
yeah,
but
agreed.
that kinda, like, found footage or, like, documentary style horror, I think, alongside folk horror, is something that I really that deeply, deeply unsettles me. That kinda
Mm.
stuff, like, I think whenever it's done well, it can be really, really powerful, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah,
I still think that people say that the Blair Witch Project doesn't hold up as much because it's been so copied, but I still think it does.
yeah,
I watched Blair Witch long after it came out, and it's still the last scene still really, really
yeah,
it's one of those again, it lingers with me. It's really horrible and
yeah.
um
Mm.
I think I still think it's brilliant. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of what other good. I mean, there's a bit of found footage stuff at the beginning of the back rooms, which I enjoyed, where
Yes.
you see through the camera of somebody who's being chased.
Mhm.
Um, but I agree. I think found footage can be really powerful. I really liked what's that zombie one where they're in the house? The Spanish one, Wreck. I
Yes.
thought Wreck was really good.
Rex really scary, especially
Yeah.
the ending. Yeah,
Yes.
it's so well done. And, actually, the first Hell House movie, the other ones
Still
aren't
haven't
really
seen
that
Hell
good.
House,
Have
but
you
I
not?
would like to. Yeah.
Yes, the first one, that really scared me as well because it's very, very well done. You don't really see anything for a long, long time. It's always just kind of inferred.
Mhm.
But that really, really got me as well. The other movies aren't as good, but the first one is particularly creepy. Yeah, if Blair Witch kinda got you, then it would as well. Yeah.
Is it set in? Am I right in thinking it's sort of set in a haunted, one of those haunted house type um
Yeah, yeah, so they've basically bought
buildings?
this old house thing somewhere in New York State, and they're turning it into, like, an experience. People can go in, and it's
Yeah.
like a haunted house kinda thing. And then it kinda becomes too real kinda thing, but, yeah, there's certain scenes in it, and it works its way backwards from the big moment, if that makes sense, where something
Mm.
huge and terrifying happens, and then it kinda goes back to the start and kinda works towards that point, and you know what's coming, and you don't really even know exactly what it is, but it's just this terrifying moment, and it's kinda working towards it, and there's some stuff in that because it's just all from the camera, the camcorder, yeah, it really, really gets under your skin.
Oh
But yeah,
god.
I loved it.
Good. Okay. All right. So that's another one for my list.
Yeah, perfect. As we finish, Rebecca, how about you leave us just with a recommendation for, is there like a book or a TV show or a movie that you think people who want to kind of get into horror and take like a kind of
Mm.
first step into it should maybe look at first of all before they kind of really dive into it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm,
Um, a good book or TV show. I mean, what I would say actually is if you're really interested in horror, a good thing to do is to go and read short stories by
mm,
just all the great writers and just see, because they also are. A short story is very digestible. You know, you can read it easily in an afternoon, on a bus, on a train. Um, and so many of them are really scary to read. I quite like reading horror as well as watching it,
mm,
and it could give you a taste for things that you like. So, you know, I've got a collection of folk horror tales called Damnable Tales, which is really good. So if you're interested in folk horror, go and read some of those, and then go and watch some of the films, or um, go and read the Edgar Allan Poe stories. Like, they're so good.
mm,
They're so scary and creepy, and Bram Stoker. And there's actually really good on Audible. There's a nice series of Vincent Price kind of telling you famous horror stories. So like
mhm,
you know, from Roald Dahl. Like, Roald Dahl's a good one actually to read as well, or to listen to. So that might be a way of kind of sampling different genres.
mm,
Um, you know, go and read The Signalman by Charles Dickens, which is a classic ghost story, or The Monkey's Paw, or go and
mm.
read some M.R. James, and then go and watch, for God's sake, go and watch Whistle I'll Come to You, the old one. It's so good, it's so scary. And these are like shorter ones, though, shorter episodes or shorter adaptations of short stories, and then that's maybe like a little like kind of a buffet, and then you can go and watch longer horror films in all
I
the
like
different genres.
how you've framed that, a buffet for I love that. Brilliant. Rebecca, thanks so much. I mean, I feel like we could definitely have one of these conversations again because this is
Oh
really
yeah.
maybe touched on so many things. I could just wanna go into more.
Oh
Um,
yeah, anytime.
yeah, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. I'll share this, soon with everybody. They can go back and watch it again. But yeah, thanks for talking horror with me. Really appreciated it.
Yeah, thanks for chatting.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.